Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tales from the Inside. And now, would you please welcome your host, Miss Angela Sawyer.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming to the storytelling show, Tales from the Inside. Excuse me. I have a tiny bit of a stuffy nose. I promise I am not, I don't have COVID. I just have a regular stuffy nose. It just happens sometimes. So, it's very nice to talk to you. Happy almost Christmas. There's about to be a really big snowstorm here in Boston. So everybody is hunkered down and getting ready to do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 9 months, which is sit in our house and be on the internet. So I'm glad that you came to visit us. If you haven't been here before, this is a storytelling show that used to happen in my living room. And it's very cozy and low-key. And it's basically people who perform a lot, especially if they perform stand-up, which a lot of the guests here do. When you do stand-up a lot, you get a chance to practice all your gestures and the words that you're going to say and what order you're going to say them in. And if you do it a lot, sometimes you start to feel like you're performing yourself. It's almost like you're acting, but the character is just a different version of you. And while I like great stand-up, I also feel like sometimes it's nice to just hear people do the original thing that inspired stand-up, which is kind of just talk out of their head in front of human beings and actually try to connect with people and not know what you're going to say until you get the words fall out of your mouth at the end of the sentence. And so I really encourage people to do that with the show, and I try to get them to tell stories where they might not know everything that they're going to say. They might kind of walk off the Wile E. Coyote cartoon cliff and hang around in midair with some clouds, but then instead of falling to the ground suddenly, they just get to turn around and wander back to safety. And so it's a pretty fun time. I try to have people that I just like talking to them on the show, and that makes it fun. And it makes me feel like I have friends, which, and I hope you get that too, because we all need them very badly right now. I am so tired of seeing my roommates' faces, and I bet you guys are too. So I'm going to start us off. I give everybody their own theme, and it's their prerogative whether they decide to use it or not. So maybe they'll tell you about it, maybe they won't, and it'll be okay. We'll figure it out. I'm going to tell you about my best brush with greatness tonight. I have for many years before I did whatever it is that we're doing now, I played music. And I'm a very bad musician. I'm a strictly local avant-garde musician, which means that I cannot play real stuff. But I love it very much, have a great time. And my brush with greatness is that I founded a hardcore band in Lowell, a band called Ritual Silence, which you have not heard of. I promise you have not. Even if you know me personally, you have not heard of this band. But it was still a brush with greatness because I was the muse for this band. And here's what happened. When I was about 20 years old, and I was my first couple of semesters in college, I dated this guy. And when we broke up, he locked himself inside the college radio station for a few days and played a song that he thought would make me upset or jealous or, I don't know, sad, whatever. And the dean had to come and break him out. And then when I didn't respond the way he thought I would, his response was to start this hardcore band. So that's definitely the most princessy thing that has ever taken place in my life. And likely to be forever, the most princessy thing that has ever happened to me. So I want to tell you how it went. Basically, the guy that I dated for a while, his name was Marcello. He's a good guy. I met him when I was going to college in Lowell, and I went to college for philosophy, which if you also did that, good for you, but for everyone else, sorry. I know you hate it. Philosophy is very pedantic and we're all aware that it is not well liked. So I went to school there, and I was a weird kid. You can see my face, so you know that I'm still like that. But I was a weird kid. My hair didn't quite work, and my clothes were a little off. And there was one other weird kid in all my classes, and it was this kid Marcello. And when I was 20 years old, I was really into punk rock, and I wanted to, look and be a rebel, which I'm not really a rebel. I just wanted to look like one. So what I did was I didn't have money to go get like a fancy, super cool hairdresser rebel haircut. So I just got some scissors, and I gave myself a really severe undercut. I had long hair like now, but I cut like shaved down as close as I could all the way around my head, a big chunk out of it, which just made my hair look thinner than usual. And the part that was really, really short, I bleached it, and then I dyed it lime green. And while I had that haircut, one of my professors one day, I turned my head, and he said, "Oh, you dyed your hair under there." And I was like, "Yeah, I dyed it. It's brown on top, and then underneath it, I cut it short and dyed it lime green." And he was like, "Oh, I just thought you were really ill." So it did not look good or very punk rock. It just looked weird. And Marcello, the reason that we met is that he basically had the opposite haircut. He had shaved his head from here up and bleached it and dyed it lime green. And so he had a weird short mohawk for a while, that kind of stuff. And we matched. So we started talking, and eventually we started dating. And one of the first things that Marcello told me was that he wasn't getting along. He was living with his parents, and he wasn't getting along with them, which I have a very soft spot for. And I was like, "Oh, you gotta move. Your parents, clearly we're rebels, and we're here to change the world and make it better. And we know what's going on. And old people, they are crazy stupid, and they just have, they're just rigid and set in their ways. And that's the only reason that things aren't going well. You should just move in with me." So after we'd been dating for a few weeks, I had him move into my dorm room with me. So I lived in a dorm, and I had a dorm roommate, and both me and my dorm roommate, we had our boyfriends move into the dorm. And basically what we did every day is me and my roommate we'd get our little ID cards, and we'd go downstairs to the cafeteria, and we'd load up trays and bags with as much food as we could, and then we'd take it upstairs, and then we'd have a big breakfast with our boyfriends, and then my roommate and I would go off to class, and both of our boyfriends would just hang out in our dorm room all day, and then eventually we'd come back. And so it was like a 50s housewife, but the genders were reversed. So that went very well, and everybody was happy, and we all got along really well, and for months that was going great. And then I realized that summer would get here eventually. And when summer came, everybody would get kicked out of the dorms, and we would all have to go find apartments or go move back in with our parents. I didn't have any parents to move back in with, so I was like, okay, I got to find an apartment. So I knew it was coming a couple months away, and so I asked Marcello, "Hey, when summer gets here, maybe we could get an apartment together." And he was like, "Oh yeah, we should totally do that. Let's do that." I was like, "Okay." And I was afraid I didn't want to be confrontational, so I waited a beat, and I was like, "So, if we do that, we have to pay rent and put down a deposit and stuff like that. Is that something that you think we could do?" And he said, "Oh yeah, no problem. We'll be able to do that." And I was a little confused by his answer, because he just lived in my dorm room all day. As far as I know, didn't have a job, and very rarely went to his classes. He just ate dorm food and hung out. So I didn't see how that was going to work, but I trusted him, and I was like, whatever, it's a ways away yet. And little by little, as the summer got closer and got closer, I got more and more worried about the fact that Marcello didn't seem to have any income or any money for anything, and I didn't know how we were going to make an apartment happen. And so I would try to talk to him about it, but I didn't want to be like his mom and dad and like come down hard on him. So I would try and kind of very carefully breach the subject and see if it was going to make anyone upset. And he assured me over and over again that everything would work out fine. So as it got closer, I started looking around for places, and I found one that I could afford. And the people there were in their early 20s, which meant they were like 2 years older than me, and they seemed impossibly adult and super cool. And I was like, oh, it'd be so great to be in this apartment. And it was just like a dump in Lowell. And so I told them, I was like, look, I'm thinking of moving in with this guy, Marcello, but I haven't really figured out whether or not he's going to pay for, how that's going to work, how the money will work. And they were like, you'll figure it out. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll figure it out. And then I would go home and talk to Marcello and be like, I found this place. And, I think we could do it, but we have to figure out how to make the money work. And he'd be like, yeah, we'll figure it out. And I would be like, okay, I guess we'll figure it out. So little by little, it got closer and closer. And it started to be like a week away or a few days away where I was going to have to move. And so I was like, okay, I have to put down money for this place. And I told him, like, hey, I'm going to put down the money for me. And if you are going to do it, it has to happen by this date. And he was like, oh, yeah, don't worry, we'll figure it out. And we never figured it out. So eventually I just moved. And the day that I started packing my stuff, like as I was like, okay, today's the day. I woke up and I took a shower and I started packing. He was all of a sudden very upset, and he just left the dorm room, which was very unusual behavior. And I was like, well, I don't know. I can't do anything about that. It upset me, but I was like, I have to move. Like, it's the only day, like, you can't stay. I was like, I have to get my stuff out of here, so I have to move. So I moved, and I got settled into my new place, and my new, very adult roommates were very lovely, and I was very excited about it and so on. And I didn't see or hear anything from Marcello for a couple weeks. And then one day, I was walking across the bridge between where all the apartments are and where the school was. And I was just walking to go get a sandwich. And I saw coming across the bridge on the other side, Marcello's best friend coming towards me. And I was like, oh, cool. And I waved, and as we got closer, he seemed very upset. And he was like stomping mad. And he got up to me and he's like, I can't believe what you did. And I was like, what did I do? And he was like, I can't believe you did that to Marcello. And I was like, okay, you got to explain. And that is when I found out that Marcello had walked off and locked himself inside the college radio station and put on a 45 on repeat. He just put it on over and over and over again for 3 or 4 days. And I hadn't noticed because I was busy moving, so I hadn't been listening to the college radio station, and nobody had mentioned it to me. So my big question, like the first obvious question, I was like, what song was it? Like, what was this message that was meant for me so dearly? And Marcello's best friend was like, you can't guess? You don't know what song it was? And I was like, no, what song was it? And he said, oh, it's Promises, Promises. And I was like, the pop hit by Naked Eyes? That's, you gave me promises, that song? That's the song. And he was like, no, the other song, your favorite song. I was like, I've never heard of this song. What are you talking about? And many years later, I looked it up, and there is a very obscure song with the same name as the Naked Eyes song. Maybe that was it. But the thing was, apparently my promises, I had broken them. But I was confused as to the entire situation. So I did not see Marcello anymore, but I did run into his best friend every once in a while walking across the bridge whenever I would go to get a sandwich. And the next time that I saw him, he came across the bridge, and he was like still a little mad at me, and he was still a little like, and we got up close, and I was like, hey, how you doing? And he was like, see my shirt? See the shirt that I have on? And I was like, yeah. And it was like a white t-shirt with a kind of a blurry image of a wall and then illegible writing on it. And I was like, okay, that's a fine shirt. And he was like, this is our band. And it turns out that he and Marcello had started the band Ritual Silence. I don't know if you guys know how starting a hardcore band works, but mostly what happens is that a couple of dudes who are friends get together and they get a 30-pack of PBR, and then they drink it in like an unused warehouse space where the walls are kind of peeling, and then they just go home and they don't record any music whatsoever. That's the most normal thing that happens. And then about 1 in 100 of those, they get instruments and they just hang out with the instruments while they're drinking their PBR. And then like 1 in 100 of those, they play music on the instruments. And then occasionally, 1 in several of the people who play the instruments, they turn into a band that actually like records and plays out and so on and so forth. So the stress of me breaking my promises to Marcello had pushed them over the edge to where they were finally recording songs and making t-shirts that were unreadable. And I remember thinking, there's one thing you shouldn't do when you name your rebellious hardcore band is you shouldn't give it a name that like the people who want to insult you would say of you. You know, you don't want to give like the insult DVD commentary as your name. So Ritual Silence is not the best move for telling people how you want to shake them up. Eventually their band existed and played a couple of shows, and they were probably pretty good. And I think that Marcello and his friend both went on to become dads and husbands and are probably very nice, happy people somewhere. And I just get to remember that I was a hardcore muse one time, a long time ago. That's my story of my brush with greatness. I'm very excited for the performers that are here for you tonight. I've got lots of fun people on the show, and it's going to be a good time. So, your first performer for the evening, she's fantastic. I have really enjoyed seeing her on online shows during quarantine and following along with whatever dating nightmares she's getting into. I feel a great kinship with her dating nightmares. And I think you're going to love her a lot. So please put your hands together right now for Kathleen DeMarle.
Yeah.
Oh, hello. I wish I could, this is another reason I shouldn't have unmatched with that anarchist polygamist, because I could have been his muse for his pop punk band called
That's right.
My Philosophy Romance. He was also an adjunct professor in philosophy somewhere in this city.
I told you.
Anyway, I can't top Angela's story about being a muse. That has been my life goal ever since I was obsessed with Twilight as a child. So my story is not as enticing as Angela's, but I will say that I'm close with my family. I'm close with my family probably to a fault. Like I'm the youngest of 2 children. I am the only person in my family that's not married. So like, for example, when we go on family vacations, it's always like, oh, Kathleen is going to take the pull-out sofa. Or like, if we drive somewhere as a group of 5, I have to be the one that sits in like the middle seat in the back of the car. So it is by no surprise that the apartment in which you see me live streaming from is co-owned by 3 of the members of my family, my parents and my brother. And when my brother's now wife took her residency at Tufts University for veterinary medicine, my brother was like, well, me and my parents co-own this apartment and they still want to use it, but they don't want to pay all this money to keep it without a person. So they were just like, Kathleen, even though you don't want to live here, you are going to live here. They're like, you live with a roommate now? that's not going to be a thing that you do anymore. And I shouldn't be complaining that I live alone. It's very nice to live alone. During the pandemic, it's been very nice to not, to like, if I am behind in rent, I don't have to come up with the excuse that the check got lost in the mail. Like, I can be very honest to my father that unemployment is behind and I spent too much money on DoorDash this month. Like, that is a very honest thing I can say. So I shouldn't complain. But the part of the reason that I took this apartment was because my parents and my brothers and my brother and his fiance wanted to be able to come and go as they please. Basically, like, my couch, which is a nice pull-out sofa, is theirs whenever they want to use it. And there was there was a period of 2 years where I was fairly convinced my brother was going to move in with me. So, anything is possible. But that is besides the point. The point of the story is that I live in this apartment, and I live in a basement apartment. And I live in an old building. I live in downtown Boston. So to put it in perspective, the building that I live in was built in the 1800s, and it was meant for probably a family that had staff, like they probably had, somebody that like worked in the kitchen, and like they probably had somebody that did their laundry, and they probably had, I don't know, like a wet nurse. I don't know. So most likely I live where the old kitchen was. I'm shocked that I have not seen a ghost yet, but what I'm trying to get at is that although this apartment seems modern, it is behind these walls. There are some pipes that are just weak. Like, you could sneeze and they would just snap. So over I've now been in this apartment for 5 years. Over my 5-year period, on a yearly basis, like clockwork, there's this one thing that always happens. It's always like around the first cold weather snap of the year. There's always something that happens, which is called my neighbor's pipes burst, and they don't know how to shut off the water, so it leaks into my home. And you're like, oh, it's like once a year, but it's not on an alarm. There's not like, I don't know when it's going to happen. It's just a premonition. And so I'll highlight a couple incidences. First off, as I said before, this building is very old. When they put in the new apartments, whenever that was, they made 8 apartments out of, this brownstone that used to be someone's home. And they didn't lay out each apartment to match. So that means that my neighbors that are directly above me, their bathroom, where they poop, is located directly above the only usable closet I have in my apartment.
Oh, no.
Which means that closet has leaked dookie water, poop, fecal matter water onto my entire wardrobe several times.
Oh.
And the first time it happened, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, what the fuck is happening here? But by the third time, you have it down to a science. You're like, all right, grab this stuff, move it here, do this, do that. Well, the most recent time, I will say that I heard because I know what the sounds are in this apartment now. Like, I have PTSD from all these pipes bursting, that when I hear a little drip, I'm like, is there rainfall in my apartment? Like, I do not have a white noise machine. So I heard the drip, and I was like, oh, there's pee water leaking into my apartment. So I did the right thing. I ran upstairs, I knocked on my neighbor's door, and I was like, hey, I don't know what's going on. If you clog the toilet, that's fine. Just let me know. And the girl was like, I'm a small woman. I did not clog the toilet. It wasn't me. I'm having issues with my kitchen. I was like, your kitchen's on the other side of the apartment. It is not your kitchen, okay? This is not your kitchen. So I had to call building maintenance and they came out. And then it turned out that this girl did in fact clog her toilet and then disappeared for 2 months.
Oh, Jesus.
Now, on this specific occurrence, I will say for the record that I was packed and ready to go on a family vacation to Cape Cod, in a trailer park, mind you, in a trailer park, but packed and ready to go. And this was also a vacation in which we were celebrating my mother's birthday and I was in charge of bringing the cake. So I had to call my parents to explain to them that I was delayed because all of my belongings were covered in poop, basically. And the first question out of my father's mouth was, do we need to stop by on the way and pick up the cakes from you? It wasn't like, do you need some towels? Do you need like a Xanax? Do you take your time? He was like, is the cake okay? And I was like, yeah, the cake is fine. What is not fine is the fact that all my belongings are like shit on. And my dad was like, we can buy those. I'm like, we can also buy a cake, Richard. Like, we can purchase another cake. And he's like, not like that Concord Tea Cakes cake. We can't. And I'm like, you have an addiction. There is a problem here. And he's like, we have the trailer attached to the truck, but we could drop it off in a Walmart parking lot and swing on through. And I was like, this is not an ideal situation. I will bring you your fucking cake. I will bring you your cake. Meanwhile, I need to solve the problem that is a puddle leaking in my apartment, because the other problem is when you live in a basement apartment, the floors are not flat. So that means you get a nice big old puddle of urinary water. But this, my friends, was not the worst occurrence of a pipe break in this apartment. The worst occurrence was a couple years ago, in which I had my upstairs neighbor at the time, who I had a hot and cold relationship with, not a romantic relationship, a hot and cold relationship as in like, they were either, like skiing up there, like, or like having loud sex, or they would like text me and be like, hey, do we need to let your dog out? Is she okay? So I get a text message that there's a problem. I get a text message that a pipe has exploded and is like dripping into my apartment. So luckily I live close to where I work. So I like hop in a cab and I, get over here, and we find out that a pipe has just like ripped from seam to seam because the HOA doesn't feel like putting in new baseboard heating. And for some reason, I am left as the project manager on this situation. Like, these people in my building just see a tall woman and are just like, our leader, the tall blonde lady. Like, and I'm like, I don't want to manage this. I am the basement dweller. I do not want to be in charge of this issue. So needless to say, like, I have to make some calls. I have to like put some towels down. I have to comfort this guy who thought that he was going to like lose his eye or something from like the pipe exploded and it was near him. And I was like, all right, cool your jets. You're an engineer. Like, calm the fuck down. So it is at this point that I determine that the situation is dire enough. There's enough water leaking, but it is too early in the day for me to tell my work that I can't come back. The situation has been managed, or like, there's nothing else I can do. unless I decide that I want to turn into a vacuum cleaner and like mop up everything. And there was a service being called for that. So I end up having to take my dog to work. Now, mind you, at the time, my dog was a blind, overweight, senior wiener dog. Like, she's supposed to be miniature, but this dog is like 25 pounds and is just 25 pounds of stubborn dog. So I can't get an Uber. And I'm like, I guess I'm carrying this dog a mile to work, because they said I could bring her. So I bring my dog to work, and I have to go to a meeting. So I go to a meeting and I come back, and my boss calls me into her office and she's like, Kathleen, I am a little worried about your dog. And I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, well, you told us that your dog was a female, but are you sure? I was like, what do you mean, am I sure? And then she was like, well, I mean, your dog, its stomach, and she pointed. I'm sorry, but if you're old, your body is not tight. And that also goes for small mammals.
Oh.
So she points at my dog's stomach, which is like hanging down. And she's like, your dog has a dick. I was like, that is not a penis. That is my dog's geriatric belly. I do not appreciate you misgendering my dog. And she's like, well, your dog it's not my fault. Your dog has a gender neutral name. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry that 8th grade Kathleen couldn't pick a better name that points to her gender for you. So needless to say, that was probably one of the weirdest days of my life, because I had to argue for about 20 minutes with my boss that my dog was in fact a female. And that is how I ended up being somehow labeled the super of this building. And that, my friends, it was a time, or I should say multiple times, when a ceiling fell in.
Give it up for Kathleen tomorrow. Fantastic job.
Yeah.
Kathleen, I want to tell you, I think you will appreciate it. Plumbing is problematic. One of the Boston housing is its own special world, partly because there's not enough places and the people who need to live in them don't have enough money. And the buildings are sometimes a couple hundred years old. And there's a lot of colleges around here, so there's a lot of students who have to figure out all that, and it's just a perfect storm of mess. I've always lived in super cheap places because I don't have money. That's just me. And you learn to sort of just put up with weird things that nobody else would put up with. Like in most buildings, you would never, like, once you've been poor and been living in a building for a while, you're just like, oh yeah, that's just how that works. And so one apartment that I lived in, there was a small leak in the bathroom that would run along the floorboards, and it ate up the floorboards. And so little by little, over the course of like 10 years, this hole in the floor in the bathroom grew. And at first it was very tiny, but then after 10 years, it was so big that you could see, it was like big enough to fall through, like manhole size. And you could see directly into the bathroom of the first floor apartment.
Oh my
and, like,
God.
just wave at your neighbor. So our solution, because we were all poor and couldn't get our shit together, is we just bought bigger bathroom rugs every year and threw them over the hole. And we just all knew, don't ever step on that bathroom rug. And every once in a while, someone would come over to visit, and they'd be like, hey, I'm going to use your bathroom. And be like, wait, don't step on the bathroom rug. And they'd be like, what? And you'd be like, don't look. Don't even pull it up to look. Just don't stand on it. It can't support your weight.
Oh, man.
So I could have been your upstairs neighbor, is what I'm saying.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to hear more stories about crazy apartments, but I welcome them if they're there, and it's okay. We don't have to if they're not. I'm excited for your next performer. This guy's great. So, in the before times, before we all stayed home all the time, I used to help run a storytelling show with my friend Ken called Story Club Boston. It was once a month, and your next performer actually helped us save it. We were trying to find a home for it, and he helped us find a place in Cambridge Community Access Television where we could run it, and he did all the tech work for us and made us look good, and basically just made the whole, he did all the work, and we just sat back and we're like, wow, how great is this? He's fantastic, and he's a very, very good storyteller. I'm excited to hear from him. Please put your hands together right now for Nate Shue.
Yeah.
Honestly, this isn't my planned story, but all that apartment talk made me think of, I spent a year living in the basement of a former youth hostel was where I lived, which had no central heating whatsoever, which was really bad, and had a lovely window that outlooked the dumpster and an abandoned bike rack. And I remember one night we were woken to tapping on the glass, and it was a raccoon trying to get in. So that was a fun year. It was literally like tapping like a person. I'm not really going to talk about my theme. I think Kathleen's story honestly would fit better. I had a time your insides turned into your outsides, but I'm a person who has a gag reflex that's about as sensitive as a hairline trigger. So throwing up is a pretty normal reaction for me. And what you would consider a funny story about throwing up, I would consider a Tuesday. So I'm going to talk about something else. It's about to snow, which makes me think of this event that happened back in 2013. There was a really heavy winter storm about to come in, but I had gone online and I had found movie tickets, an advanced movie screening to a movie that I really wanted to see. I was in high school, so I was under the age of 17, so I couldn't go by myself. So I made my dad take me to see this movie. Now, I don't know how much people know about the world of advanced screenings because it's not very cool, at all. But there are really two types of advanced screenings. There's one that's specifically for critics, where they have reserved seats and it's nice. And they have one for general audience members where you stand in line for 2 hours so you can watch Cats 2 days early. And this was the latter. So my dad and I made an agreement. He said, I'll take you to this movie if you shovel the entire driveway for me. So I was this wimpy high school kid. I wasn't even able to lift the bar in gym class, but by sheer force of will, I dug out this entire driveway and off we went. We drove to the Orange Line station just outside of Melrose where we lived, and he parked on the side near the road, and we took the Orange Line in and saw the movie. If you're interested in what the movie was, just out here, it's Inside Llewyn Davis. I have the DVD here because I have a mild addiction, and this validates it. But it got the normal reaction of any movie I really had my dad go with me to. I liked it, even though it was pretentious. He wished it was Star Wars, So we take the T back. It's 10 at night, and what do we discover? But our car had been plowed in by the side of the road. The snowplow had gone through enough times in this heavy snowstorm that we were now trapped. So at 10:30 and without shovels, we had to move all the snow out of the way, exhausted from watching what is frankly a very meandering art house movie. But we did it by, again, sheer force of will. Going to the movies was kind of the activity that I did with my dad the most often. It was the one time where we didn't have to fight and we didn't have to look at each other for just 2 hours. We could stare at a screen and pretend we didn't hate each other. I think partially he also wanted to see a lot of these movies, and I was just his excuse, to get out of the house. I remember one time I asked him if we could go see The Master, the Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and I think he really regretted the decision when they got to the scene where Joaquin Phoenix makes a woman out of sand and then begins to have sex with her. That's not a movie you want to watch with your dad, at all. Very awkward scene, and the movie only gets worse from there. It's again a very good movie. But he did it because he knew that I loved movies and enjoyed seeing them, and he wanted to validate that experience. He wasn't exactly the nicest person to me. We again would argue constantly. My family has a particular obsession with being right all the time, which you know how that goes. But this was the one thing he took me to. So we'd go to them a lot, but eventually I got older and older, and I started going to more and more movies by myself. But sometimes back from summer vacation or something, and he would take me to see a movie. It's January of this year, and my dad has a cardiac arrest in the middle of a Stop and Shop parking lot, and he's taken to the hospital. We didn't really know what was going to happen to him for about 2 days. It was kind of just this nebulous limbo where we sat and waited to see if he would respond. And on that second day, I decided it would be a good idea to go see a movie to try to take my mind off things. I go to this movie. It also was an advanced screening, but that's kind of unrelated to the story. And I sit through it. And at the end, I take out my phone and I have like 7 voicemails. And I check them, and it's my mom, and she's just frantic, out of her mind. She says, you need to get to the hospital now because your dad's going to die. Now, I don't know if there is a good movie to see when you learn your dad's going to die, but there's probably a better movie to see than Doolittle, the Robert Downey Jr. Dr. Doolittle movie, in which there's a scene where he quite literally fists a dragon, and I'm not making it up. This is a real movie, and it's the movie I was at when I learned my dad was going to die. So that kind of tampered the experience for me for a while, and I didn't really, for the next couple weeks, be able to process anything. This was like my connection to my dad, and I didn't have the ability to, I didn't want to experience that without him. Now, we actually had plans that like day after he collapsed to go see 1917, which I didn't end up ever seeing in theaters because of that. But come February, time's gone on, and right in North Station opens this brand new fancy movie theater. It's the ArcLight Cinema. This famous LA movie chain where they have fancy foods and the screens are all artistically projected and whatnot. I don't know. It's a lot of marketing jargon, but they decided for the first month of opening, they were going to screen a free movie every single day for the entire month of February. So I went to every single free movie for the entire month of February, which is kind of a weird experience to go alone to a movie, because after about 1 week, they start recognizing you. And then after another week, you're like a favorite. And then you're there more than the people who actually work there. But then right the month after, in March, is the start of the pandemic, which also, fun fact, started on the very day of my 21st birthday. So what a fun present to get than your one hobby disappearing forever, So it's been a weird time, kind of this ironically poetic situation where I lost my dad and the movie theaters in the same year. Ironically, the last movie that I may ever see in theaters was Mank, a movie that I could just watch at home anyway, but I paid money to see it just because I wanted the experience of seeing it. But also, starting today, the state of Massachusetts has announced that it is once again closing movie theaters. Warner Brothers has announced that they're moving all their stuff to streaming. And in January, the AMC chain is going to go bankrupt. So I don't really know what's going to happen to the future of the one thing that ever really kept me going, but I'll always kind of associate those memories with my dad and the experience of like going to the movies with him. And I really hope it stays alive so that those memories can stay alive. But I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. Bail out your movie theaters, give money to independent theaters. Thanks. That's my story.
Guys, give it up for Nate Shue.
Yeah.
Nate, when this is over, I'll take you to the Brattle, where I used to work. And
The Brattle.
Great independent theater in Harvard Square. And we will watch something unintelligible and difficult and very boring. And we'll have a great time. I'm very excited.
Yeah,
I love the movies that you mentioned in your story. Inside Llewellyn Davis is the great movie about the early 60s folk scene in New York. The sweaters are very on point. That's like the music, meh, the writing, meh, it's like a mighty wind without any jokes, but the sweaters in that movie are worth the experience, top notch. I also, I know what you mean, how sometimes movies just, like you count the story of your life by which movie you were thinking about when it happened.
Yeah.
And Mank is a pretty good one for the pandemic. That's
it is weird that I broke quarantine to see Mank. In hindsight, wasn't maybe not the smartest decision.
Honestly, at this point, after 9 months, we've all had to break it for a dumb reason. Like, at one point during the earlier part of quarantine, I got asked to go in to the office where I work, which was empty, and burn CDRs for my boss. And I was like, this is a weird time trip to 1992. Like, they couldn't find anyone else who worked at the company who knew what a CDR was. and I was like, oh, yeah, I know how to do that. I know what those are. So, luckily I didn't catch a deadly disease from just knowing what the 90s were. But yeah, we've all been there. And I think, honestly, a great movie can, like, it's like a pair of glasses that you put on that you can, like, see how the world works from that point of view. I totally, you've heard the stories that I've been telling tonight. I've totally made life-altering decisions based on my favorite record or a movie that I liked. And you will fuck up your life that way, just like I did, for sure. But you will have great stories when you're done. So I look forward to taking you to the movies sometime. It'll be fun. Okay. I've got a couple more performers for you. I'm very excited for your next performer. This guy, I don't get to see him often enough, and so I like the opportunity of quarantine lets me get a chance to see people who I don't get to see all the time. He runs the Comedy Co-op in Maine, which I don't know if that's still a thing because I don't know what things are at this point, but he's very, very funny, and every set I've seen of his I've really, really liked. So I'm excited to have him, and you're going to love him to death. Please welcome Connor McGrath.
Hey, everybody. Good evening, virtual comedy studio. Thank you, Angela, for having me on the show this chilly Wednesday evening. Excited to be here in your living rooms or wherever you happen to be watching this show. I don't have anything to contribute to a roommate discussion or an apartment discussion because I lived with my parents for the first 31 and a half years of my life, and then I moved in with my girlfriend. Most of my bad roommates stories involve my dad, and was he really that bad? He let me live in his house rent-free for 31 and a half years. He would just kind of like walk into the living room and ask me, Connor, do you want some of this leftover chicken? It's not very good. I'd be like, no, I don't. That's just the basis of my conversations with my father. But yeah, I miss the road. I think the road is a big part of comedy. We have a constant state of wanderlust, and just leaving the house, like I would just give anything right now to do a shitty bowling alley show in West Newbury, Massachusetts right now. Just saying, like, not even a good show. Like, I might even do an open mic. I'm just chomping at the bit. Just had a constant state of wanderlust for comedians. Even in the pre-pandemic times, I was just, constantly breaking plans with my friends and my family so I could do shows in, like, Buckfield, Maine. I did a show at the Bucket Pub in the Bucket Bar and Grill in Buckfield, Maine. Say fuck it at the Bucket. There was actually some shows there. I didn't do them. I wasn't on the shows. I wasn't fortunate enough to be asked to do the shows of the bucket during the pandemic, but they're still doing comedy. It's the type of place that's still doing comedy during the middle of the pandemic. But the show I was there, it was all everybody just happened to be at a family birthday party, and I'm not sure if they knew the comedy show was happening, but we were definitely interfering with their family birthday party, and they set off fireworks in the parking lot after the show. And I think I was just glad. One of those shows where I'm like, I'm glad we made it out of there without anybody being physically harmed. So yeah, but that kind of wanderlust, that's what led me to becoming an international headliner. I was doing a show, I think 3 years ago in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, a show in the city of Montreal in the province of Quebec in the country of Canada. And it was good. It was a little DIY basement venue, kind of like a artist's gallery in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, that my friend Rachel Gendron ran. And she moved back from Canada, possibly as a result of this show. But I did a show at an underground art gallery, headlining there. Big timer, headliner. You always have to mention if you headlined a show at my level. Just I was a headliner. I didn't go on second. I closed out that show for 19 people at that basement art gallery in Montreal, in the province of Canada, in the province of Quebec, in the country of Canada. But it was my first international comedy show. I was very worried. Something would be lost in translation. Something would be horribly lost in translation. So I kept explaining everything. It was like, so I was at Applebee's with my girlfriend. Now, Applebee's in America, it's the mid to lower tier chain restaurant, probably higher than a Denny's, less than a Chili's. Do you guys have Applebee's here? I think that was like most of my set was just explaining American chain restaurants, because that's most of my material in the pre-pandemic times. I'm just talking about chain restaurants, but I don't know what I'll talk about after the pandemic. I haven't been to a chain restaurant. I've been DoorDashed them, but I haven't been inside one for a while, so I'll have to reassimilate, see what Applebee's has done in the pandemic. But yeah, so I was in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and my set goes okay. And afterwards, I'm staying at Rachel Gendron's house with the other comedian, and I realized I forgot pajamas. I forgot to wear like a nighttime outfit. You know, an outfit for the daytime. You got to have an outfit for the nighttime as well, because I'm staying at a house. I'm an invited guest, and I don't want to be walking around in my skivvies, especially with a lady, Rachel Gendron, and I don't want to be walking around my skivvies. So I'm like, Rachel, I feel terribly awkward right now because I don't have any sleepwear. And she says, Connor, I got some, my fiance, it was her fiance at the time. It became her wife, and now I believe it's her ex-wife. But we'll talk about. Rachel will clear that up with you whenever. If you just hit her up, I'm sure she would love to talk about her failed marriage. I was like, my fiance has some pajama pants that she never wears that her parents gave her for Christmas. I'll let you borrow those for the night. Her fiance was out of town. Her band was on tour. So she let me borrow these pajamas. They were lovely pink pajamas, plush fleece pink pajamas with the poop emoji, popular poop emoji from Emoji, like the Emoji Movie. I believe it's in the Emoji Movie, and also on your phone, the emoji section of Facebook Messenger. So it was these lovely pink plush poop emoji pants, pajama pants, and they were a little bit tight on me because it was meant for a much smaller woman, but they were comfortable and they did the job. I didn't have to walk around Rachel Gendron's apartment in my skivvies. So yeah, and that was good. And after I was done with them, I told Rachel, "Here, give these back to your wife," and she was like, "No, Connor, you just keep them. I don't think she wants them." And then like 6 months later, she's like, "Yeah, Lana wants to know her pink poop emoji." pajamas went. And I believe that's the source of their divorce, is she let me walk away with her pink poop emoji pajamas. But anyways, the main portion of the story, what we're going to go to the theme of my story is, comedians, like I said, we're always chasing that high. So I was like, I can't just do one show for 19 people in Montreal. I got to do a show for 12 people in Vermont on the way back. So we did a show above Raimondo's Pizzeria in Bridgewater, Vermont, at a DIY, another DIY space. No licensed venue at that period wanted to have me there, but the DIY scene was really propping me up. Like Angela Sawyer, the underground art scene really has an affinity for me. But I was at I'm not going to say the name of the comedy club because I hope to be booked there to headline in front of 12 people after the pandemic. But Kathleen DeMarle said it in the comics chat. And it's fine. There's like 12 people there. I think I did Bullet that night. So I got on full transparency. I did not headline that night. And I had on a nice shirt. I had a good outfit on that night. One of my favorite plaid shirts and my favorite pair of khakis. And I did a set. It felt okay, but we got some Big Mac pizza from Raimondo's Pizzeria before the show. And so I enjoyed that after my set. I was looking forward to that after my set. I was like, no matter what happens during my set, I'm going to have a slice of the Big Mac pizza. And that's pizza with a sesame seed crust. And it's just like a Big Mac sandwich at McDonald's, except for on pizza form. It's a sesame seed crust, 2 all beef patties, pickles, Thousand Island dressing, special sauce. It's good stuff. The cheeseburger, American cheese. I was just thinking about that pizza my entire set. And that was my downfall, is I was like rushing backstage to get a slice of pizza. Now the backstage was like behind a bar area. And so you had to crouch, get backstage. I get on these little situations backstage where you kind of have to sneak in, wiggle under. I had to crouch under this bar to get to my Big Mac pizza that I was eagerly anticipating after the show. And I crouched and I split my favorite pair of pants and just like blew out the crotch entirely. Luckily, I was wearing underpants. I did bring enough underpants. I did bring an extra pair of underpants. I was wearing underpants underneath my khakis. I blew out my crotch, and the comedians were all laughing. They thought it was the funniest thing since the heyday of Seinfeld. They were just in hysterics, and I was steaming mad. I was sitting there. My skivvies were flipping. Were all there to see. I worked so hard the previous night to make sure that nobody saw my underwear, but then everybody saw my underwear. And then they were laughing and laughing. And then the kicker is when I went to get up from the banister, I bashed my head against the banister and knocked myself a little bit silly. So that was the time where I needed to change my clothes. And it kind of worked in and out. Like in Montreal, I was able to get pajama pants, but in Bridgewater Corners, Vermont, I wrecked my clothes. I spit. And after I got up from the banister, I went to grab my Big Mac pizza. I took a bite out of it. Thousand Island dressing spills all over my shirt. Unreal. It was like a Three Stooges cartoon, but it was just me. I was just the one man stooge, sad one man stooge. That's been a lot of fun, and I'll throw it back to Angela Sawyer and turn off the alarm that I set on my computer to time myself. Thanks so much. My name is Connor McGrath.
Guys, give it up for Connor. That was fantastic. I now am craving a Big Mac like I haven't in 15 years. Holy shit, that was really fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe you understand the DIY art scene very well, Connor.
Yeah.
If there was such a thing as a master's degree in DIY underground art scenes, I believe that you could get one. That was fantastic. I think one of the hallmarks of playing Little Underground Spaces is that you'll get asked to perform in a weirder and weirder places. There was a festival, a yearly music festival that I still usually play it. It's probably not going to happen this year, but like happens every year, and I always like to play it in Worcester. And the first time I got invited, I was so like, oh, what a step up that someone invited. Like I didn't ask them; they asked me to come and perform at this festival. I'm so thrilled, and I was like, I got to put on my A game, so I like set up all my stuff and I practiced a run through, and I like brought all the extras and got all ready to go, and I went there and I hauled all my junk inside, and it was a festival, so it was like all day long, many sets, just like one after the other after the other after the other. And when I got there, it was very noisy because somebody was performing, so nobody could talk. It was just too loud. And so I put my stuff with everybody else's stuff, and I was kind of waiting around. And the set ended, and everybody clapped, and everybody was very excited. And the promoter, who I had never met, came over to me, and he was like, "Oh, you're the girl. You play in the bathroom." And I was like, "The bathroom?" And he's like, "That's where the electricity is. Do you want the electricity? Play in the bathroom." I was like, "Okay." So I played on top of a toilet that night. And the next year when I went back, I had met those people since then. And so when I got there, I was like, "Hey, can I play near like where people could see me and not in the bathroom this time?" And they were like, "Well, if you're going to make a request, how about the stairs? You want to play on the stairs?" And I was like, "Okay, stairs, sure. I can play on the stairs." And they were like, "We'll get you an extension cord." So I played the bathroom the first year, stairs the second year. Finally, after 5 years, I played the outside back porch. I played in the kitchen. Finally, after 5 years, I made it to like the living room. and that year when I got up, I was like, "This is my first set in the living room at this festival," and everyone cheered, and I felt like a huge accomplishment. So honestly, it's all in the DIY that you take home with you. Your next performer, our headliner for the evening, is so funny. She's been running an online show called The Rehash, which you should definitely watch. I've been running my little things, and but mostly I've just been doing what everybody's doing, which is like curling up in a ball in my room and staying up until 4 o'clock in the morning sobbing because of the pandemic and various stresses and so on. So I haven't watched many shows, but I carved out time for this one because her show is awesome and she's so funny. I'm really psyched that she was able to join us tonight, and you are going to love her to death. Please welcome the incredible Tookie Kavanaugh.
Oh, Angela, thank you so much. That was such a nice intro. I mean, truth be told, I'm wildly problematic, but people tolerate me anyway, and I still haven't figured out why. So, oh man, my theme for this evening was the opposite of now. And after watching that new Netflix film, The Prom Under Duress, I can't help but to think of wanting to be in a time opposite from now. We need to be back in the time opposite from when that movie could have been made. It was very bad. And I've sat through some shit. Like I sat through all of Loquisha. Don't do that to yourself. Respect yourself. But you know what I mean? As someone who's sat through some stuff, highly do not recommend. A few thoughts about that film. I think at the peak flash mob at the mall scene, because there's so many vignettes in this film. My initial thought of just seeing these teens from Indiana dancing at the mall with the guy who played the Elder Mormon in Book of Mormon, all I could sit there and think was, not you hoes singing Love Thy Neighbor in front of an American Eagle. I mean, I don't know. I'm just, when I think about so many elements of that film, like I can't even think about my own life right now. I'm still so wrapped up in just the badness of it. Like I was watching it and I was like, Bob Fosse did not step out on his wife with all those cabaret girls for you to turn around and have Nicole Kidman and her Tuscan marble forehead out here singing a Dollar Tree version of All That Jazz. Stephen Sondheim I'm just mad. I'm not even an angry person, but I'm just mad. I'm a whole straight and I'm mad on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community that they picked James Corden to play the guy from maybe the early seasons of Queer Eye, who they definitely kept up in the attic. He wasn't helping anybody. Why? You mean to tell me you couldn't find one gay actor in Hollywood? Hollywood. I don't know. For me, watching this was kind of like, I felt the same feelings of like, you know, when there was the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement over the summer, it was like, okay, cool. Like now people are finally listening when Black people say like, hey, you know, stop killing us. That'd be cool. That'd be nice. Like that'd be tight if like, you know, you wouldn't just hate us for the fact that we exist. But there's another part of me that thinks about that and it's just like, wow, in order for that to happen, it took not only a global pandemic for all of you to stay your asses at home, but it took video of a man taking a knee to his neck for people to finally wake up. And I'm like, watching this, I'm like, wow, it's going to take James Corden playing a fictitious gay man for people to wake up and be like, wow, LGBTQ teens don't deserve this. We need to treat them better. We need to do better. We need to do right by these teens. Oh, I'm so sickened by so many elements of this film. I mean, Kerry Washington was playing a PTA mom with homophobic teeth. Why would they do that? Why? I'm just mad. I need help. I just have so much to process about everything that happened in this film. And there was the fact that Meryl Streep, bless her, one of America's premier actresses, for sure. But her whole character, no real arc, other than just rampant sex eyes at Michael Key, high school principal Keegan Michael Key. And yeah, I mean, he really does look like the one Black principal in all of rural Indiana. So good casting choice on that part. But like, I don't know. I can't believe I watched a film that made me say, I would rather be watching Cats. Have you seen Cats? Have you seen Cats? Have you been high enough to see Cats? I just, you know, I think I also definitely alienated some of the people watching this with a lot of my rants. I just, you know, I try so hard to be a good ally to other marginalized communities. Like I'm not perfect, but I can't believe I watched a film that made me be mad on another community's behalf. You know, I'm like, damn, I really try and stay in my place, but I'm like, mad. You know, there's a lot of who let this happen. Like who let Zootopia happen? Have you heard of Zootopia?
No.
Yeah, it's free on YouTube for a reason. It is the story of a goy. I can say it because my dad's Jewish. It's fine. It's the story of a goy who is determined to marry a Jewish woman because he never wants to make another decision for himself in his life. So, yeah, right? Sounds terrible. Yeah, sounds terrible. You know what's the real indicator of how bad Zootopia is because what's his face? Tom Arnold is in it. That, you know, a film's gonna be bad if Tom Arnold is in it. Right? Is James Corden Tom Arnold for the straights? like I just I don't know. They really wanted to make this movie like the Gen Z version of Save the Last Dance because representation, and it was just. I'm sorry, I'm ranting. Angela, ask me another question because I don't want to just hijack the show with my rage towards this film.
I want to know what you think the best thing about prom was.
Nothing. Nothing. I mean, like I was even angry at the wardrobe choices. You know what I mean? Because like, because there's two proms. They put on two proms, right? Two proms. Which side note, how unrealistic is it to think that a bunch of high schoolers can keep enough of a secret for long enough to coordinate and organize a whole second prom to exclude the one gay student in their class? I mean, come on. Not happening. But the wardrobe choices in this film, at the climactic second prom, that's all inclusive. It felt to me like in the writer's room, they were like, okay, scene, final prom, but how do we gay it up? And the wardrobe director was like, sequins. They love the sequins. And I'm just like, this is gag. I don't know. They made better choices for wardrobe on Golden Girls. You know what I mean? They could dress those old women down. But the wardrobe in this film was very much serving me hot date at Applebee's type energy. And I know Indiana is better than that. I know they're better than that. There was nothing I liked about this movie. I'm sorry. Okay. Again, I feel like I'm just hijacking this show with my outrage at this film. You may ask another question.
Okay, I'm having a great time. I love the discussion of film. So here's a question for you.
Yes.
I have not seen this movie, but I have seen trailers for it. And the only thing, like, I couldn't tell what the plot was supposed to be. But I did notice that Meryl Streep's wig is not correct. It is a very, very bad haircut. And they made her look like they gave her not like they gave her a regional office manager from a rural area hair. And so my question to you is, if Meryl Streep were dressed in the clothes and hair that she has in the movie Prom, what would happen if she were in another of her, like, what would happen if that character walked into another one of her iconic roles?
I think in Sophie's Choice, she'd be the one getting gassed. I
was trying to set you up without saying Sophie's Choice. Nice work.
I know. I'm sorry. I'll see myself out. This is too much. I told you it was problematic, Angela. I'm sorry.
No, that was great. Thank you.
It was real bad.
Is it the worst thing that you've watched during the pandemic?
No.
So what beat it?
I think it's a tie between Zootopia and Loquisha, which are an affront to both halves of my family, the black half and the Jewish half. Oh man, I think this is maybe number two, because those two are tied for one. I think this is number two. I'm still deciding on a number three because I've seen some stuff. Yeah. Oh, you know what? You know what might be number three, though it's not quite a movie? Please Hammer, Don't Hurt Him, the movie. Which is based, yes, it is based entirely on MC Hammer's CD of the same name.
Wow.
And it won a Grammy for Best Long Form Music Video.
Pretty good. Excellent choice.
Yeah.
MC.
We've all been dredging the bottom of our various streaming services. I like movies a lot, so before the pandemic, I was watching. My favorite show was a Russian knockoff of the show Monk.
Oh no!
I dip deep, and So I have watched now that the pandemic has been here for months, like every single show that has every actor in the Russian knockoff of Monk in it.
Oh no.
Wow.
Which means that I have seen an incredible swath of terrible sci-fi.
But you know what the best worst sci-fi movie is?
Do tell.
And appropriately so, because 'tis the season. Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
Oh, excellent choice. Excellent choice. I haven't seen that in a long time, actually. But there's a bad acting has this like stiff, it's like meringue. It's like this weird stiff creaminess that I find very charming. And Santa Claus Conquers the Martians definitely has that.
It's not even that it's the bad. I never blame the actors for their choices. Sometimes I blame their agents if they're big enough actors. Because Meryl Streep's agent is making some choices. Like,
Yeah.
why is she in the De Niro
What
phase
does she
of her
need to
career?
buy?
But she's in the De Niro phase of the career, and I just don't want her to be doing that. Like, who does she owe money to, right?
Mhm.
Because this was very much Meet the Fockers for Broadway. She doesn't need to do this. We don't need to see them doing these roles. So I'm never mad at the actors, but like the bad movie overall is very much the Jordan Almond of cinema, you know? It's just that crappy candy coated almond that you get at baby showers and bridal showers that tastes like open ass. I just sorry, I'm in a mood tonight. I'm sorry, Angela.
I hear you.
I'm making your show weird.
No, it's great. I love hearing what you've been doing. Have you seen anything that you liked?
Have I seen anything that oh my gosh, that's a very good question. Okay. Flight Attendant on HBO Max.
Okay.
Mostly because of the soundtrack, because it's like intense music and then the music intensifies and you're right there with it.
That's good. I like that
Yes.
one. Good choice. I'd say, let me think. I know on the Rehashed, you guys have been watching some real gems. You guys have been digging them up.
Well, that's because it's education for my co-host.
It is. It's very good education. Tell me, of the films that you've shown on there, which one has been the most educational? Like, which one really took it away?
Leprechaun in the Hood, aka Leprechaun 5, because it is an allegory about the horrors of gentrification. So it would have been You Got Served, but it's mostly just a film about sexy teens at a Denny's. So Leprechaun in the Hood wins by
That's fair.
Yes. Well, thank you for at least like letting me chat with you. I'm
No,
sorry I went
it's
off the
been
rails
lovely.
like this.
You didn't at all. I, like, literally 2 hours before the show, I turned off all my streaming services. I was like, I've had enough. I can't take another one. I've seen the worst that you have to offer, and I can take no more. And I discounted them all. And this conversation made me think that maybe there's more left. There's gold still in the hills that I can go get. So maybe I'll turn a couple back on, go see what I can find.
There is a never-ending cesspool of bad movies on the internet available for free.
Yeah, I discovered. I was like, if I'm going to watch a movie I hate, I shouldn't pay for it.
And the best ones are always the ones that tried to be good. So they're not
Yes.
bad on purpose.
Yes. One of my favorite bad movies. So in the days of downloading, when movies first became downloadable, like LimeWire and stuff like that, people were like, the internet just got fast enough to where you didn't really stream stuff, but you could go get a movie off the internet.
Mm-hmm.
People would make whole feature-length movies with the names of famous movies
Oh my
to
God.
get people to download them. It's
Oh
a weird phenomenon. So there's a well-known movie starring The Rock called San Andreas Fault.
Oh,
And there
yes.
is another movie that is not starring The Rock and has no relationship to it that is just also called San Andreas Fault.
Oh, my God.
And it is a zero budget, no famous actors movie with basically the same plot as the movie with The Rock in it. Like there's an earth-ending earthquake in California, and the hero has to like rescue a girl.
Okay.
And the thing that is, there are many things wrong with both that and this movie. Most of the movie is shot, they clearly had so little budget, most of the movie is shot in a car so that they could just like change out a green screen outside and make it look like they were in different places.
Oh, my. Oh.
And
Ugh.
I didn't realize that there was such a thing. Like, sometimes you see CGI and you're like, that doesn't look real. But there is such a thing as do-it-yourself CGI, to the point that when fire or explosions or like things falling were supposed to be happening on the screen, it really looked like someone took a Sharpie and just kind of drew little scribbles where things were supposed to happen. So sometimes, they'd be in a car and some scribbles would go by and you'd be like, what happened?
You know what? That movie walked so that Birdemic could run.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Truly. No, you know what? I think I ran into something similar at one point in some deep crevasse of the internet. I stumbled upon a movie called Medea Goes to Africa and had nothing to do with Medea. And the opening scene is just three women loudly twerking on a table, and their and their matronly neighbor just comes up to chastise them. And I didn't sit through the rest because I was like, you know what? I know this is not an official Medea movie. Only because Nigerian Nollywood movies, like especially if you grew up in a Jamaican household, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about Jamaican households loving the Nollywood subgenre of cinema. But, they're notorious for having the Beyonce and the Rihanna movies. So now they've got the Medea movies. But I should have known that it wasn't an official Medea movie because the title didn't have Tyler Perry presents Tyler Perry and Tyler Perry's Medea Goes to Africa. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That's how you certify a Medea movie.
Oh, Tookie Kavanaugh, I'm so glad that I got to talk to you about movies.
Thank you so much for like having me on and letting me make it weird.
Yeah, I got like 5 things I want to see now, and I'm gonna hate them all. Guys, that's our show for the evening. This has been Tales from the Inside. It's storytelling. It's getting to know people the way they really are. And I'm very glad that you were able to be here with us. Much thanks to our performers who are all amazing. Thank you guys so much. This was really great. Also, thanks to the Comedy Studio who allows us to do this. They have shows pretty much every day of the week, and they're just free. They're just at the Comedy Studio webpage, and you can go and see some of the best, funniest people all around New England, all around the country. They just come here and do stuff for you for fun. So come and check it out. And I'll see you again. Next week, we will be guest hosted by Kendra Dawsey, who is going to bring us a Christmas special. And I'm pretty excited for that. And then we'll be back here until Sunday when they all let us out of our houses again. So thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Ooh, pizza's here.